Hey YouTube, so today I'm taking a look at the Shadow Priest, which is obviously the DPS spec at the pre-patch and going into Legion. Firstly, I'm going to look at our sort of baseline abilities, all the stuff we get, then I'll look at all the talents individually, then go through some builds that I use with different levels of gear and different trinkets basically. Then after that I'll go through the rotation, and right at the end we'll look at some little tips and tricks that I sort of use to play my Shadow Priest at the moment. So firstly, getting into our abilities, you've still got your offensive Dispel Magic. You've got Dispersion, which has now changed. It's only a 60% damage reduction. It was 90 before, I believe. But now you were still unable to attack or cast anything like that. You're completely silenced, all that sort of stuff. But also, it now pauses your insanity whilst you're dispersed. This will be important later. Still got Fade. Can't glyph this for a 10% damage reduction anymore. Still got all that stuff like Levitate, Mass Dispel, Mind Control, and Mind Vision. They're not really sort of DPS abilities, but they're there if you need them. First DPS ability we've got is Mind Blast. On a 7-second cooldown baseline, something like that. It deals some damage and generates some insanity. You want to be using this on cooldown. It still has a cast time, unlike when you were using Clarity of Power before, but you want to be using this on cooldown. Mind Bomb is actually a talent. This is, as baseline, this is Psychic Scream on a 1-minute cooldown. You've got Mind Sear, still your AoE ability. This generates some insanity as well. You've got Mind Bender. This is a talent. It's actually Shadow Fiend before talents. That's on a 3-minute cooldown without talents. You've actually still got Shield. This cooldown is affected by haste, and it no longer gives you the Weakened Soul debuff, so it's just the cooldown. So if you've got 3 priests in your raid, you could have a shield on someone constantly. Purified Disease, this obviously does what it says on the tin. You've got your res, you've got your CC for undead, you've got your new heal, which is Shadow Mend, heals you for 47,000 in my gear and puts a dot on you until you've taken 23,000 damage, and it ticks every second, or if you leave combat that dot drops as well. You've got Shadow Word Death. It's sort of your execute ability, generates 10 insanity or 30 if the target dies. You've then got Shadow Word Pain, which is your dot, same as always has been, instant cast and generates some insanity. You've got Silence, this is your interrupt on a 45-second cooldown. You've got Vampiric Embrace, this has changed slightly. It now heals a single target near to you. I think it is a smart heal, so it heals the lowest health. It's on a 3-minute cooldown, heals them for 40% of any single target shadow damage you deal. You've got Vampiric Touch, this is your other dot, and it also generates some insanity. You've got Void Eruption. This puts you into the main new thing of Shadow Priest, the Void form. Because I've talented it here, actually it only takes 70 insanity, but without talents it needs 100 insanity to activate Void form. You've got your Mastery, increasing the damage of your dots, and Void Bolt, which Void Bolt we'll get to on the next page. Shadowy Apparitions, same as it always was. Your Shadow Word Pain crits, launch a ghost out of you at the target, and they deal some damage. Void Bolt. This changes the button for Void Eruption. When I do the rotation later, if you keep an eye on this button, it's Void Eruption. It just changes to this. You don't need 2 separate keybinds or anything like that. And this is only usable while in Void form. So what is Void form? It's a 20% damage increase. It reduces the cooldown on your Mind Blast, and it grants you haste, stacking up every second you stay inside Void form. When you get to high stacks, this just goes insane and is so fast to play. But the insanity starts draining as soon as you enter, and the longer you stay in it, the quicker it drains. When this ends, you get given a minute-long buff called Lingering Insanity, and it keeps the haste buff that you got in Void form. So say you got up to 27 stacks, you have 27% haste for a minute, or until you next enter Void form, as it says at the end of the tooltip there. That's sort of all your abilities. You've still got your Shackle Undead, stuff like that. And what you do have an AoE fear without talents, but let's get into the talents. You got Twist of Fate, same as it always has been. 20% increased damage and healing when you damage a target below 35% health for 10 seconds, same as it has been. Really strong for execute phases or bosses where you can tab to an ad that's just about to die and then go back to the boss. Fortress of the Mind increases damage of Mind Flay and Mind Blast by 10% and makes them generate 20% more insanity. This is really nice for insanity generation. It's really good talent because you're going to be using Mind Flay and Mind Blast anyway. And Shadow Word Void. At the moment I don't use this just because I don't need the extra insanity it gives you, but what it does is it deals some damage and generates 25 insanity, which in a bulk is quite a lot, but with the current way of the bosses in Warlords of Draenor with the nerfs and the gear I've got. I just don't need that insanity. It's a 30-second recharge and you have 3 charges. So if you do have slightly lower gear, this is really good to just absolutely pound in some insanity and get really high really quickly. Mania, speed increase based on how much insanity you've got. So for soloing old raids and stuff is quite nice because you never really use void form, it's not worth it, so you can just keep it at 20% movement speed for the entire time. Body and soul, movement speed off your power word shield, same as it always has been. And masochism changes the dot that I mentioned from Shadow Mend into a hot, but only on yourself. If you cast it on someone else, it will still be a dot. Mind bomb, this replaces your psychic scream, and this is your CC row, level 45, puts it on a 30-second cooldown, an AoE stun that goes off 2 seconds after you cast it. It is an instant cast, so this is quite nice. It's just really good for dungeons and stuff, and AoE stun is really useful. Psychic voice doesn't get rid of psychic scream, it actually puts it to a 30-second cooldown, so if you need a fear over a stun, then this is the talent you're going to be taking. Probably the most interesting and fun talent on this row is Dominate Mind. It puts a 3-minute cooldown on your mind control, but what it means is anything you mind control you can use as a pet rather than controlling it yourself, is essentially what it does. Certain mobs in some dungeons do ridiculous damage if you do this, and obviously you can carry on doing your own damage as well, so it actually can be a really big DPS increase of 5 mans. Moving on to level 60, you've got Void Lord, which the lingering insanity haste buff that you get when you drop void form, this actually makes it continue for 8 seconds after you enter your next void form. So if you've got low gear or something like that, it's quite a nice talent. Basically, these two are the other ones you use. I'll explain why you'd use this one by explaining when you use the others. But if you aren't using either of the other two, this is really nice, particularly for questing, just keeps that haste really high. Reaper of Souls, now usable. Shadow Word Death is now usable on targets with 35% health rather than 20, and it always generates the maximum 30 insanity. This is really nice if there's stuff that you can kill quickly, or particularly for, depending on your level 100 of talent. If there's going to be adds in a fight, this is really good for generating insanity, And then Void Ray, this is really nice with the current class trinket. It just is a stacking buff to the damage of your Mind Seer and Mind Flay, up to 50% damage increase, which is really strong actually. Moving on to level 75, you've got Sand Lane, increases the damage of your Vampiric Touch and the healing of your Vampiric Embrace. What I should mention here actually is Vampiric Touch now heals you for 50% of the damage done as a baseline. So this actually will increase your self-healing if that's an issue for you, because obviously if your Vampiric Touch is doing more damage, it's healing you for more. Next along is Auspicious Spirits. It increases the damage of your shadowy apparitions, the passive you get off your crits from Shadow Word Pain, by 100% and makes them generate insanity. When you get to quite high gear levels with high haste and high crit, this is amazing. It generates you so much insanity and actually deals quite a lot of damage throughout the fight. But if you haven't quite got that gear, Shadowy Insight is what I'd go for it. Your Shadow Word Pain ticks, they don't have to crit, just when it deals damage, 10% chance to reset the cooldown on Mind Blast and make it instant cast. Obviously Mind Blast hits like a truck and generates insanity, so this is really nice if you haven't quite got the crit to use Auspicious Spirits. Moving on to level 90, you've got Power Infusion, which is a 2-minute cooldown and gives you 25% increased haste and insanity generation for 20 seconds. It's a strong cooldown, if I'm honest. The only reason I don't use it is because of how broken the Hellfire Citadel tier set is for Priests at the moment. But as soon as I'm not using that in Legion, Power Infusion is probably where I'm going to be going, if I'm honest. Shadow Crash, really nice for AoE damage, but if I just go into it quickly and I'll show you, everything in this area will get hit for about 55,000 damage in my gear. Yeah, 54,000 damage. Everything in there will get hit that. It's not split at all, it just does the damage. It's on a 30-second cooldown. It is really big damage actually if you've got a nice big pack to hit with it. The only issue is there, as you saw, it has travel time. So for raids at the moment, you think, oh, Cormrock? Yeah, Cormrock. The hands, that'll be really nice for that. Bladestorm and Barrage just absolutely destroy them because of their HP nerf, and Shadow Crash just doesn't land before they actually are dead from Bladestorm. You have to pre-cast it, which is always risky because the boss timers are just dodgy at the moment. But the one that is absolutely broken at the moment is Mindbender. Your tier set actually puts this on a 20-second cooldown there. You can see the 2 set. And because it now generates insanity, whereas Shadow Fiend doesn't, Mindbender is just ridiculous. You've got so much insanity all the time, and because of the haste buff, the haste crit and mastery buff you get from your 4 set when your Mindbender what goes away, just because it's only for 12 seconds on a 20-second cooldown. You then get a 15-second buff, which is just really strong at the moment. So this, as soon as you get your 2 set, just start using Mindbender. Moving on to level 100, you've got Legacy of the Void, allows you to use Void Form at 70 Insanity, not 100. Some people have said to me, why is this good? Because if your Insanity drains, don't you want to start as high as possible? Because the Insanity starts draining quite slowly, you can pop it at 70 and then you'll get to 100 really quickly. So it just allows you to get that 20% damage buff quicker, which is obviously the main thing of Void Form apart from the haste. Just that 20% damage buff is really strong. Mind Spike, I despise this talent. I don't really know why it exists, if I'm honest. It replaces your Mind Flay. It does some damage and leaves a spike in the target. This can stack up to 10 times. If you see there, when you Mind Blast, it then detonates for 200% of the original damage and 100% of the damage in an AoE, and it generates some Insanity. I don't know why anyone would use this. It's a really boring talent, and if you want to get the full 10 stacks of Mind Spike, you end up delaying your Mind Blast, which I can't imagine is what was intended here at all. It's a horrible talent, and unless it gets slight tweaks and some probably big numbers buffs, this is not the way to go. I'd take Legacy of the Void every time, unless I can use the final talent, which in my opinion is the best talent in the game ever. It's 10-minute cooldown, Surrender to Madness. All your Insanity generation is increased by 200%, and you can cast while moving. This is amazing. You can stay in Void Form for so long with this. Void Form actually caps out 100 stacks, so 100% increased haste plus your gear. It's insane. Void Bolt and Mind Blast basically at that point are just... well, Mind Blast is basically an instant cast, and Void Bolt is back pretty much every GCD. So you just spam them and generate so much Insanity and do so much damage. However, if you look at the end of this tooltip, until you exit Void Form, and then you die horribly. You just die. There's nothing you can do about it. When you exit Void Form, you die. This actually gives you a 3-minute buff and a 3-minute debuff. The buff is the 200% Insanity and the movement speed. The debuff is you cannot be combat resed for 3 minutes from when you pop this ability. You can pop this cooldown before entering Void Form, so you could actually get the debuff to start ticking before you use Void Form. But the buff, when the buff runs out, you die anyway, even if you've never used Void Form. If you've popped it accidentally and you're like, oh, I know, I just won't use Void Form and it won't kill me. It will kill you anyway. As soon as the buff runs out, you die. But obviously, when the buff runs, if you get to that point where the buff runs out and it makes you die rather than leaving Void Form, you can then be combat resed. So yeah, that's the talents. I'm just going to go through a couple of builds quickly at the moment. So this is the build I'm using right now for any bosses where I can't get the maximum amount of Surrender to Madness, which, to be honest, with the 50% health nerf to Hellfire Citadel, is not very many bosses. I can keep Surrender to Madness up for an entire pull of Iron Reaver, Fell Lord Zakoon, Cormrock. I kept it up till Dia was on 2% on Hellfire High Council, which I was pretty impressed with, to be fair. Gorfiend, you can pop this just before the first feast, so that you're going into feast with about 20 stacks of Void Form. With the 20% haste, you just do insane damage, and with the 50% HP nerf, he normally dies in one feast, and if he doesn't, you've done so much damage by that point, people aren't going to catch you anyway. People might get a bit annoyed that you've killed yourself and they have to do the fight without you, but it just does so much damage. Other fights that I use this on. Tyrant, it's really nice. You can pop that at the end when you're getting the damage buff as well. I've found I can pop it on the 60% when you use Bloodlust, and you just do insane damage. But if I'm not using that, this is the build I go for. Twist of Fate for the increased damage. These two rows are basically irrelevant for the damage you're dealing. Body and Soul, what is nice is you can use this as your own movement speed, and your Disc Priests, if you've got one, which you probably don't anymore, they're not going to get annoyed at you because they can still shield you due to the fact you don't get the Weakened Soul debuff anymore. So you can just use this as a speed increase, which is really nice if you need it. Void Ray, this works really well with the class trinket. If you see here, stacking damage to your mind spells. So your trinket also does Mind Blast, whereas Void Ray only does Mind Seer and Mind Flay. So many mind spells for a priest. But stacking these both up, you got 50% off there, and 45%. Let's have a look. How much is it? So stacking it up. 42%, I was close. And then 50% from that, that's a 92% increase on your Mind Flay damage. That is insane. It does a lot of damage. And then Auspicious Spirits, just because I've got really high crit, well, reasonably high crit, and enough haste that they tick so much, I get a lot out of this. If not, you could take Shadowy Insight. Mindbender because of the 2 set, and then Mind Spike's awful. I'm not going to be using Surrender for bosses where I can't basically keep it up for the 100% of the fight right now. In Legion, you'll be using this if with a boss with a long execute phase, or something like Croesus, where you know exactly how long the boss is going to take, because he has an Enrage. But with that, if you're not using Surrender, the go-to is Legacy of the Void, so you can get into Void form quicker. So that's my build for anything where I'm not using Surrender. I actually have recorded this video once already, and I got to 100 stacks using Surrender, using this build here, without Bloodlust or anything like that. So I take Reaper of Souls for the increased Insanity, but I realised at the end of the video, obviously training dummies, you can't use this, so I might as well have just taken Void Ray, if I'm being honest. And I got to 100 stacks. I've been taking Fortress just to make sure I've got the Insanity, but I think with Bloodlust you could probably take Twist of Fate, and your Surrender build would look something like this. So that's a really strong build. A build for if you've got slightly less gear would look something probably more, and then either one of these 2 talents with maybe Power Infusion if you don't have the 2 set. Basically this row is decided if you have the 2 set or not. If you don't, you go Power Infusion. If you do, you go Mindbender. This is based on your crit. If you've got high enough crit that this is you're getting quite a lot of Shadowy Apparitions out, you take Auspicious Spirits. And then this row is just based on basically whether you're taking Surrender or not. If you take Surrender, this is your safety talent to make sure you're generating enough Insanity. And if not, Twist of Fate is your go-to because it does a lot of damage. Well, it increases your damage by a lot. So that's the talents covered and the sort of builds I use. I'll just show you, go back to Auspicious Spirits, I will show you my Void Ray rotation quickly. So what you want to do is you would pre-pot, and then you pre-cast Mind Blast straight into a Vampiric Touch, Shadow Word Pain, Mindbender on cooldown, and you just, at this point, you just spam Mind Flay. You see Mind Blast is back there, so you Mind Blast on cooldown, Mind Flay, Void Eruption to get into Void form, Mind Flay. What I found is the best thing to do is Void Bolt, then Mind Blast, then Void Bolt, because you get more Void Bolts out of your build that way. So again, Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Void Bolt, Mindbender. What I didn't mention is Void Bolt actually refreshes the duration on your dots. If you can see here, they've ticked down to 12, back up to 14 seconds on Shadow Word Pain. And basically what you're doing is just trying to stay in Void form as long as possible for the stacking haste. Trying to keep your Void Ray buff that you can see just above my health bar with the weak auras, and your class trinket buff up if you have that. And you just want to be popping Void form. My Shadow Word Pain drop there. You want to try and not let it drop and not waste the global cooldown on Shadow Word Pain if you're in Void form, but I didn't get into it quite quickly enough there. So that's generally it. You basically spam Void Bolt, Mind Blast and fill with Mind Flay and keep your dots on the target. That's it, quite simple. So let me drop combat now and I can change talents for you. The only difference with Surrender to Madness is you can use this pre-pull if you're going to be keeping it up for the entire fight like you can with Iron Reaver at the moment. So you'd precast that, you'd pre-pot, and then again you'd just precast Mind Blast, and then I haven't actually used it here so you can't really see. What you would do is you would save your Mindbender until your first Void form. So you put your dots up just before you go into Void form, and then what you would do is you would pop Void form, you'd have your Mindbender off cooldown, and you just keep the same rotation. The only thing you've got to do is make sure you don't then waste your Reaper of Souls if you're taking this talent, because obviously it generates 30 increased by 200%. That's generating 90 Insanity. If you use this at about 50 Insanity or above, you're completely wasting a cooldown, a charge of Shadow Word Death, which can lead to you dying quite quickly. So yeah, that's my Surrender to Madness build there that I generally take just for safety. I could probably get away with Twist of Fate now, but yeah, that's basically the rotation, guys. You precast Mind Blast, you keep your dots up, keep Mindbender on cooldown, and you pop Void Eruption as soon as it's available to you, basically. You can hold off a bit on it if you're taking Legacy of the Void, so that it only needs 70 to activate, because you're then not wasting Insanity. You've got that 30 Insanity buffer before you need to start spending it, basically. And what you want to do is you want to wait until you can Void Eruption and have your next cast be a Mind Blast, so you're instantly going into Void form, getting the 20% damage buff and instantly Mind Blasting. Does a lot of damage. So that's basically it for the talents and stuff. Just a couple of little things at the end. What you can do is, I haven't actually got surrender, but I'll just show you what it does. So it puts the 3-minute debuff hit cannot be revived by in-combat resurrections, and the 200% increased insanity, and you can cast while moving. There you go, quite easy, quite nice. But what you can actually do with this, you see this debuff, if I had Time Warp, which I don't obviously, or anything like that, the buff would come up next to it. So because of that, it can be reset in the exact same way Time Warp can. So what you can do is you can say for Velhari or Zakuun, bosses that are really easy to reset, you can pop this, reset your debuff, and keep your buff. So it basically just means you can surrender twice in a fight. This will probably be fixed when Blizzard see how broken it can be. I've broken 160k DPS, and I am only 728 item level. I've broken 160k DPS on Zakuun. No, not Zakuun, sorry, Velhari, just by being able to double surrender. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's basically it for the guide, guys. If I think of anything else, I'll just put it over some sort of dungeon play at the end, just a bit of audio for any little tips and tricks I found about the Shadow Priest. If you did find this useful, please drop a like on the video, maybe even subscribe. I want to be doing a couple more videos going up just to before Legion about new DPS classes that I'm enjoying at the moment, and the Bear Druid as well. I'm really enjoying the Bear Druid, I quite like that at the moment, so there might be a video coming out about that. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you later.